Thank you very much, Chair. And I think being a last speaker, you know, it's advantage and a disadvantage both. Throughout the day, we've heard who the external players are, what is the crisis, how dangerous ISIS is. And I'm not getting into whether, you know, what is right and wrong, but I'm just trying to explain what are the perils of external intervention and what are the ramifications for India if we look at this part of the region. So my presentation basically would look at the key issues. I think the region in turmoil is something which everybody has talked about, and what we need to know is why external intervention. I mean, Professor Kumar has spoken about who external actors are, and also as to you cannot have an external intervention unless there is a reason to intervene, which could be the reason for the actor which is intervening and for the people who create a situation for intervention. But I think what is more important to analyze is what are the dangers of these external interventions in the region. And I think at the moment what we see is a very critical sort of a situation where everybody seems to be worried about what is unfolding in one part of the West Asia as such. And finally, I look at India and the region, you know, what are our stakes in West Asia, and what has been India's position on this particular issue, and what are the ramifications, and finally, what the challenges and opportunities for us are. This is what, when we say region in turmoil, I think in this matrix of, you know, the region which everybody is looking at saying it's all in, the region is in turmoil, but I would also like to make a point that there is a problem in certain sections, but let's not forget then this arc of instability. There are stable countries, you know, we have UAE, we have Qatar, we have Iran. So it would be wrong to say that entire region is in turmoil. I mean, I don't think I agree with that. But yes, there are problems, and there are serious problems which need to be addressed. I don't think I should probably spend too much of time on explaining about the turmoil, which is very self-explanatory at the moment. But what has happened because of the problem which is existing there is that both the regional and the you know, external actors have been involved and are part and parcel of the process which is there on. Why West Asia is in turmoil today? I think we have already heard, and there is a certain consensus that, you know, United States and, you know, the policies of the West is something which is responsible for the instability in the region. But we cannot ignore, I mean, that has been articulated in some of the, you know, presentations before. There are local and regional factors which are equally important cause for unrest and conflict in the region that we see today there. And these, I think, are authoritarian nature of the regime, the existence of substantial social and economic inequality and injustice in the exercise of political power by the Arab states, rampant corruption, absence of strong alternative power structures for people of the region. Professor Kumar did refer, I mean, what is the alternative structure which is available to the people? If you don't give space to the political opposition, then I'm sure there is a certain grievances which then, you know, emerge at a later stage. And absence of democratic system of governance. Well, I am not one of those believers that, you know, post-Arab Spring, the you know, region would have become very democratic. I think that myth has been unveiled today, and we don't see democracy in you know, Arab world today. And I'm not very sure when that would really happen, given the nature and the problems which exist there. Yes, there is a hope. I think the other important factor which we need to flag here is the military rule in some of these countries, and how military have used, you know, their power to, you know, keep themselves in regime. And regional rivalries and sectarian fault lines, of course, are an important reason that need to be taken into account when we are talking about, the region in flux and region in turmoil. And therefore, it can be argued that the external intervention has pushed the region into civil wars, regional conflict, and turmoil, but the local and the regional factors have really provided a perfect situation, the right recipe for these external actors to intervene. Equally important, I would say, is to note that these local and the regional factors will in future limit the success of intervening powers who have tried to justify their intervention on humanitarian ground to bring about any kind of peace and stability through the means of military intervention. I think this is something which needs to be noted. Possibly what can be achieved by these military intervention is only the short-term gains resulting into some kind of a symptomatic treatment of the problem and not long-term political solutions to the issue as such. Why countries intervene? I'm sure you don't, and these are some of the factors that I could flag for countries, and all of them balance of power. If we look at it, is Iran, which was considered to be an important factor in the US policies, and they always wanted to contain and marginalize Iran to maintain certain balance of power. Regime change, of course, we've seen the example in Iraq. Controlling energy resources and protecting interest of allies, and then the humanitarian reasons. These are some of the factors which, if we look at the situation today in West Asia, I think all of them probably have contributed to the intervention as such. What then are the dangers of external intervention that we see today? Reasons could be any, but I think the most important aspect is what has that resulted in. And this is, I think, what one has to sit and probably think over as to how much the region has really gained and how much has it really gone into a crisis situation which is now become such a serious challenge that the international community has to really look at working together to address some of these challenges. And I think the dangers that we could see are the creation of failed states. They have resulted in completely lawlessness and instability. I mean, case in point is that of Iraq, Libya, and Syria. Provided fertile ground for emergence of these external forces, which is IS, ISIL, whatever we may like to call it. Have inflicted heavy damage to human life, economy, infrastructure of the countries involved in the conflict and civil wars. And I think here, if we look at the figures of the refugees, of the help which probably people, I mean, they are innocent people. And in this, game of national interest of countries who want to protect their own interest, I think the probably penalty is paid by the innocent women, children, and people, and I think that is something which needs to be taken note of. Have also added to the suffering of innocent people. I mean, I think this is something which there have been certain interventions on the pretext of humanitarian intervention, and I think that's been really questioned, and there is a debate on that. Whether they're right or wrong, I think we still need to, the world is still debating on these issues. I think the other danger is that it has resulted in increased number of refugees and displaced people that I just mentioned about. And it has definitely not helped the countries in creating representative democracy, rather have resulted in centering non-democratic regimes and, of course, the non-state actors that we see today. I think everybody is blaming United States, that it is because of the United States, policies that the region is in flux, and, today. I just wanted to, probably read out the statement where today even the United States, this was in article written by George Friedman and Stratford, and I think this is where he talks about the confusion and probably where United States is today. It says the United States is at the moment off balance. It faces challenges in the Syria-Iraq theater as well as challenges in Ukraine. It does not have a clear response to either. It does not know what success is either theater would look like, what resources it is prepared to devote to either, nor whether the consequences of defeat would be manageable. I think this is not coming from the region. This is coming from the people who are in West, and that is why I thought, it is important to flag this statement. So I think there is basically a realization that, certain policies have definitely not delivered the desired results. And that is where the correction probably needs to be done. In the recent NATO summit and some of the statements, I think clearly highlight, the certain changes that are taking place in their perception. And the statement of the British, Prime Minister is equally important to read here. The NATO, alliances is clear about the threat that we face, he says. The scale of that threat and fact that we must use all the instruments at our disposal, humanitarian, diplomatic, and military. Let's see that the statement does not rule out the military, intervention. So I don't think we would probably, the nature and the size could be different, but I don't think we should rule out the military intervention that is very much in the minds of the West today. Well, I think I just wanted to highlight that these statements, really point out a couple of things. First, that now they believe that this is such a serious threat that they need a strategy which obviously is not possible without the help of the allies. So, and also another important point is that it does talk about, getting the help of the local, regional, and the international actors as such. So this is something which I thought was interesting here, but I don't know how much time we have, so I thought what is important is India and the West Asian context here. Everybody, normally what we hear is that India has a lot of stakes in West Asia, and these are some of it, and whatever happens in West Asia would definitely have a larger implication for us who have. But I think while we have stakes, it also limits our, act in the region as such. So it is both the opportunity and the challenge for us. First and the foremost, which even our, Jalvi Singh, he pointed out in the morning, is diaspora, religious and cultural connections, trade and energy. So I think while we look at these figures and numbers, we cannot rule out that, it would not be easy for us to just take a certain decision which would not help, people who are working there. So one has to have a very, very carefully crafted position which they would like to take in a situation when it is a divisive kind of a, problem there. So remittances and all, I think I just wanted to, I think if we look at the trade between India and GCC countries, and that is something which is so striking, which does tell us that, you have to be really careful when you are dealing with this region, because you don't want to probably take a position which would be inimical to your own interest. And if you look at the figures, I think this is something which clearly points out that our stakes are high in terms of our economic relationship with the country. If we look at the major trading partners of India from 2011 till 2014, most of these countries, UAE and Saudi Arabia have always figured among the first 5 top trading partners of India. So this is something which really, limits also our sort of position that we would want to take on West Asian issues as such. If we look at the graph, which clearly tells you that, our trading partners, in GCC countries, how significant it is, which cannot be really ignored. And these are other Iran, Iraq, and, we have put it as we call. I mean, our divisions are a little difficult in MEA because we have Gulf, we have Wana, and we have Iran, which is part of, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. But what I just wanted to indicate by these graphs is that, look, our stakes are pretty crucial here. This, even if we look at the percentage-wise, it is definitely, it clearly shows that, these are the countries which are really important. I don't know, something has gone wrong. But there are new opportunities also opening up at the moment if you are looking at the economic opportunities in this part of the region. The recent report very clearly tells us that there have been good growth rates in Indian engineering exports, and this is a very latest report which comes, which has really come, which talks about our opportunities in Iran, Turkey, and Jordan, and how the numbers have really gone up in this particular. In case of Iran, there's been the jump of over 100% year on year for the period between April-July 2014. In July, the shipments increased to 4,177 million from 52 million in 2013, which I think is a very, very striking example of our thing. I think this I would probably, an energy dependence, I think I would so. What I would like to just point out is what has been India's position on it. I think this, I need not tell this audience what it is, but I think if we look at our policy makers, our ministers, our prime ministers have articulated our position on the external intervention very, very clearly, that it supports its commitment to the resolution of problem through the United Nations, through dialogue and through people's participation and the multilateral process, and not through any kind of unilateral military intervention. That is what remains our stated position. So these are some of the statements which very clearly tell you what our position is. But I think what is more important here is not that what our position is. What is more important here is what can really we do there. And if we look at the current level of engagement and the recently articulated, statements of the current government, where I think the focus is definitely going to be more on the neighborhood and look east policy, and the third focus comes to West Asia. So we exactly know, despite all the stakes that I have talked about, West Asia will be on the third position after neighborhood and East Asia. So this is what probably we should expect from this government at the moment. And it was said that our government's policy is being strong, proactive, and sensitive. And I think sensitive is the one where the West Asia comes in. So we should not be in any misnomer that West Asia, despite all the stakes that I've talked about, would be priority one of the India, but yes, and that would probably also tell us as to where we will be in the years to come, I guess, at least in the immediate. What I think is more important, we don't have many participants from the Gulf as such, GCC countries at the moment, except Bahrain. But during our interaction, and even when they have come and articulated their views, there's some of the views which really deserve, attention. And I think what is important, what they say is that post 9/11, what we witness is a very noticeable change in the foreign policy of the Gulf states. They are looking at Asian countries, and there has been certain debate in the first session where we talked about the role and the involvement of the Asian countries in Gulf. Engagement with the Asian countries is a major feature, but Does it mean that they are really going to de-link with the Europe and West? I don't think so. I think that would probably be very much there. The US presence would continue despite their decline or their pivot to Asia. But what the Gulf countries have been telling us that they are our insurance company, you know, they're like an insurance company, we invest and we get security from them. So I think that perception is something which is definitely very, very important to bring out here. What is interesting to know from them is that, you know, they no longer look at India as a backward country supplying only unskilled labor. This is something which is noticeable. They want greater partnership with us. They want India's more involvement in the region. However, what is not very clear as to what kind of involvement are they looking for. When it comes to the security cooperation, they have made it very clear, no boots on ground, but minus boots on ground, everything is welcome. I think that is the kind of role that they foresee for India. Even when you talk to them, they say, you know, India is considered to be a country which is politically non-intervening in the internal affairs, and therefore it has the capability to play a larger role. I think there is a case where India is considered to be a welcome country to play a role, but given our priorities, one will have to really kind of figure out up to what level India can play a role there. And they have been very critical about India not playing a role. They said we've always been a fence-sitter, we've been a reluctant player, and therefore, you know, they want a certain position from India. And this is what is expected from India when it comes to the region. I think what is the major challenge for India today? Whether they can take a position, I'll come to that point here. But I think before I come there, one has to look and can India take a sides on divisive issues in the region? So far, we have only taken a middle path. But are we willing, or are we willing to go beyond that? Will it be possible? My own analysis is, I think so far this position has really helped us. We've been getting our energy supplies, our workers are being there, so I don't see a major change in India's position but yes, I think there would be a greater cooperation. It will go beyond what it is today, but I think our stakes in the region would also probably limit, you know, our role in the region as such. The other important, you know, challenge for India is to deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. I mean, how do you do the balancing act? And most importantly is India's close ties with Israel, which have always generated certain amount of debate within and without as such. What then are the ramifications for India of the situation which is unfolding in West Asia today? I think security of the Indian people is the top priority for us. We've already seen this in case of Iraq and Libya. One will have to see as to what kind of you know, strategy can we really formulate so that, you know, we are in a comfortable position. Securing energy supplies from the region is the second most important sort of thing which we will have to ensure. Yes, you know, our energy supplies have not been, you know, restricted, but the pricing has definitely been there. But in future, if, you know, there is going to be an implication of the safe supply of our energy resources, I think that is something which needs to be articulated here as well. And I think the last and the most important is that we see certain youth who are getting attracted to these, you know, jihadi groups. And I don't foresee how you can really, you know, solve this issue. We have, even if we are very watchful, you know, in such a big country, you know, it is really extremely difficult to ensure that people would not join these groups. So you have to have certain, soul searching within and see that, there is this particular challenge is taken care of. So this is the major problem. And impact of instability in the region on India's trade and business interest is one important aspect that we need to look at. Options for India, I think under the new security situation which is still unfolding, New Delhi will have to adopt a new strategy of engagement with the West Asian region to draw the maximum advantages and avoid problematic and negative situations inimical to its interest. And simultaneously, I think it will have to take the existing cooperation with more stable countries in the region to a higher level. That is what is the possibility under the opportunities are many. I think, agriculture, IT, infrastructure, security, maritime, service sector, education, these are some of the areas where even the Gulf region wants, the West Asian region wants India to be involved, and these are the opportunities for India to get in. It will have to re-articulate its new West Asia policy with a roadmap for next 10 years. I think especially the important aspect is that we need to upgrade our ties with Egypt and Iran. Iraq was already, Iraq is the second most important energy supplier to India, therefore it is extremely critical. I think look at ties beyond energy because we've often blamed by these Gulf countries that India is only focused on energy resources, and they said India needs to look beyond energy when it wants to develop a strategic partnership and a relationship with it. So prospects for India to cooperate with other actors, I think I'm not going to because this has been talked about. And thank you very much. I'll just stop here.